Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to Mystical Munchies featuring the Final Fantasy XIV Ultimate Cookbook. We finished up with the official Dungeons & Dragons cookbook last week with the Trolltide Candied Apples, and those ended up being not very good, between being hard as a rock and not tasting very good, taking a lot of effort to get into it. So that ended up not being a big hit. We're into the appetizer for our first recipe out of this cookbook, the Crab Croquette. As these have small stories, let's go ahead and tell the story. Namazu are used to having seafood dishes, but these crab croquettes use a method I learned called deep frying that is both very tasty and hurts very much. Yes, yes. Please be more careful than I was when I was making these. Also, wait until they cool before eating them. I also made that mistake as well. Well, hopefully we're not going to make that mistake. As usual, the ingredients are waiting for us over at the table, so let's head in that general direction. For this recipe, we're going to need 3 tablespoons of butter, 2 tablespoons plus a cup of flour, and all-purpose flour, and it's divided that way so it'll make sense later on. Half an onion and a shallot, both diced. A teaspoon each of garlic powder, ground fennel, I'm using fennel seed, salt and pepper. 3 to 4 medium russet potatoes, peeled, cooked, and mashed, which you can see they already are. A pound of crab meat, 6 ounces of tofu, 3 eggs, and 2 cups of panko breadcrumbs, which the panko is right here just off shot. Now, full disclosure, I've actually never had tofu before in my life. So you're going to also get my first unfettered reaction to tofu. I don't know what my reaction is going to be. It could be, oh my god, this is the greatest thing I've ever eaten since sliced bread. Doesn't seem very likely to me. My reaction could also be, oh my god, get this crap out of my kitchen, I never want to eat it again. I just don't know what it's going to be. I suspect, though, that the truth is that the real reaction is going to lie somewhere in the middle. Like the old saying goes, whenever you have a dispute between two people, you have A's story, you have B's story, and then you have the truth somewhere in the middle, which I suspect is what's going to happen here. But rather than me ramble too much more, let's say we move into the kitchen and start putting this recipe together. We're going to start with the frying pan that I've set over medium-high heat. We're going to take our 3 tablespoons of butter and we're going to melt it in there. So I know another element of hurry up and wait on Mystical Munchies, and let me just make sure we're using the right burner. I probably could have just left this burner on from when I was cooking the potatoes earlier, but I didn't think of it at the time. Usually I do think of stuff like that, but I just didn't in this case. So it's had plenty of time to cool off. Well, it looks like feels like it's starting to heat back up, and the butter's actually starting to melt very nicely. It's actually melting pretty quickly now that I look at it. We'll skate that around the pan. And by skate, of course, I mean prod it around with a wooden spoon. Okay. We can probably let that continue doing its thing now. I think we gave it plenty of help. Do a little bit of separating of the onions off shot. Hopefully we can make a little bit more progress on that before the butter melts, although that's melting pretty quickly. think that's probably about as much separating on the onion as I'm going to get. Put a little bit more of this around. Butter should be just about melted here. Okay. Looks like we're good to go, so now we can add in the onion and shallots. So I've got right here, and I'll get a timer ready because we want to cook these until they're translucent for about, that should take about 5 minutes. So we'll put those in. And I'll set a timer for 5 minutes. And yes, we are going to watch this cook in real time. Because A, I'm going to have plenty of time before my camera needs to shut off and take a small breather, and B, it's only 5 minutes. And yes, just out of habit, I'm probably going to be stirring it a lot more than occasionally, which is what the recipe calls for. I'll get at least the fennel seed open so I don't have to worry about doing that on camera. Mostly while the onion and shallots are cooking, so I've got a little bit of time to kill. Okay, so that's all good to go. Break up the onion and the shallots a little bit more in the pan. We've got about 2.5 minutes left on the onion and shallot cooking time. So yeah, very early in the month as well for what I'm calling Advent of the Phoenix. And yes, I'm going to include Mystical Munchies, as you can probably imagine, as part of Advent of the Phoenix, just because those are also videos that I'm making on the channel. What I'm roughly expecting during December is I'm going to put up at least an average of 1 video per day. I forgot to mention this during the end of November recap, but Christmas weekend I'm going to be traveling. I don't exactly know when I'm going to be traveling yet, but there won't be any videos made that weekend. So I'm going to try to put the whatever Sunday video I've got lined up there up on probably right before I take off. So yes, there will be no videos during that Christmas weekend, but I'm always reading the comments of the videos. I don't respond to everything, but know that if you leave a comment, I will see it. So no need to panic on that front. Got about 1.5 minutes left on these onions and shallots. And as I mentioned during the end of November recap, get back in there. As I mentioned during the end of November recap, I've got a lot of stuff lined up for December, so buckle up. It's going to be a great month on the channel, if very busy for yours truly. But hopefully we'll all have a blast with it. Just checking my timers. Okay, looks like everything's mostly good here. I'll admit that I had never actually heard of shallots until I started doing this segment, and now I've worked with them quite a few times. Looks like we should be just about ready to go here. Got about 10 seconds left on my timer on my watch. Okay, looks like we're good to go there. So now, we need the flour as well. We need the 2 tablespoons of flour at this point. I didn't see the flour was on the list. So I've got all my seasonings just off shot. So I've got the flour. Wait. Okay, remove the pan from the heat after. So yes. So here's our 2 tablespoons of flour going in. That can go into the dishes. Flour needs to go back to the table because I'll need that again. Then we've got our 4 seasonings. The fennel seed, which is right here. A teaspoon of that. Garlic powder. I think I'll be done with the teaspoon after this. Let me check. Yes. I will be done with the teaspoon after this, so I can put that right into the dishes. Salt. And pepper. Sorry, I'm going to run a little bit low on that, but actually I've got some more on standby. So I was hoping I could get a little bit. Oh, there we go. Right, there's our teaspoon. So now that can go into the dishes. The pepper can go back up. And we want to mix this until well combined. I'm surprised they didn't want any liquid in here to try to make everything smooth out a little bit more. But you guys know I do these recipes first time live on Mystical Munchies. I tend to do it by the book, and then I modify it later. And I still have that list of recipes that went right and I want to experiment with. So far it's only the Kowakian crumb cake that I wanted to experiment with, where I think I used blueberries in that the first time, and now I want to experiment with different fruits on that. So this is actually pretty well combined for now, which means we can kill the heat. We'll bring the camera over to the countertop. Bring the mashed potatoes in shot, and we'll pour in the onion shallot mixture. Okay. We'll combine that in, and hopefully I'm not going to burn my hands when I get to a later step of this. So I'm just going to use the spoon for now. Okay. Try to get some of the stuff on the edges in. Actually, I don't want the kitchen to get any, it's pretty warm in here, and I don't want the kitchen to get any hotter than it's going to when I'm cooking. So I think that's probably about as combined as everything is going to get, which means now I can move the potatoes out of shot for the time being, and we'll need the potatoes to stay pretty close, but we're going to bring a baking sheet in shot next. We've got a baking sheet and a roll of parchment paper in shot. No bonus points for for guessing what we're going to do with this. We're going to take the parchment paper and line the baking sheet with it. I don't know what it is about these baking sheets, but they never seem to sit just right with the parchment paper on them. Or the parchment paper just never seems to sit right. Hopefully that will be a big enough baking sheet, though. We can bring that out of the way for the time being, because we need the potatoes right back in shot. So with the potatoes, now we're going to add the crab meat, throwing that in the garbage, the plate in the garbage, and the tofu. And we're going to mix that until it's also well combined. Which I'm probably going to have better luck if I do this with my hands and hopefully not burn myself on anything that we've done in here. Mashed potatoes are still a little bit toasty, but it's not horrendous. Like I'm not in danger of burning my hands or anything like that. I'd say everything in here is just toasty enough to notice, but like I said, I'm not worried about burning my hands in particular. Okay. I think we can give it a couple minutes more. Okay, I think everything looks good there. So I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse, or a quick dip in the dishwater. And we'll bring the baking sheet right back in shot. With the parchment paper lined baking sheet in shot and the potato mixture just off shot, no bonus points on another Phoenix Pop quiz, because what we're going to do is we're going to take the mixture and we're going to shape each one into round portions, and we want to get about 13 to 15 of these to be about the size of a golf ball. So let's see what we can do here. That's going to be a pretty big golf ball, but let's see if we can get it. Okay, doing this over top of the potato bolt mixture is going to be a better idea, and I don't really like how this is holding. I wanted to do this in front of the camera, but I think doing it over top of the potato mixture is probably a better idea, and like I said, I really do not like how this is holding. That's probably about the best I'm going to get with that. We'll do a couple more of these just to see, but yeah, these are not holding together at all. It's taking me way more effort than I was expecting these to hold together. Look at this. These are not staying uniform at all. I'm sure these are gonna break apart once I get them into the oil, but that's coming later. And the other problem I'm having is if I try to move them, I've got to have the right touch with these. Because if I go too soft, they're just going to crumble. Too heavy, and I'm going to break them. Like this one, this third one, look at this. That's not even holding together. There had to be, I think there's another step that's missing in here, or another ingredient or something that's missing for these to hold together. Maybe I'm overthinking this because the oil and some of the later steps will help them hold together, but I don't know. This is taking more of an effort than I thought it would. I'm going to do one more here. I know I did a recipe of, I know I did a potato croquette recipe earlier in the year that actually held together beautifully, but this is not holding together at all. I think that's probably the best I'm going to do with that one. That one's definitely going to fall apart when I get it into, let me give my hands another quick rinse. I'm wondering if that might be part of the problem, where as I'm getting more of the potato mixture on my hand, it's not going to hold together as well. That's the other thing I'm kind of worried about here. Let me do, you know what, I'm actually going to shut the camera off so I can do this. Then we'll come back in about an hour. Actually, we'll come back in about half an hour, even though these are going to need to refrigerate uncovered for an hour. But there's another step we can do in the meantime while we wait for their timer to run out. Fastest hour ever! Yay! Except for, no, they haven't actually gone in the fridge yet, because I did want to provide a little bit of an update on what happened. So yes, these look huge, but what actually ended up happening was, you might have noticed in the first few croquettes I was making, I was having a lot of problems getting them to hold together. And I think a big part of the problem I was having there was that I was trying to roll them together when I should have been trying to smush them, then roll them together. So actually I'm not worried that these are going to fall apart on me once they get into the oil. What they are going to do now is they're going to go into the fridge uncovered. Looks like I got room up here on the top shelf of the fridge once I get the eggs out of the way. I got to get a couple of sauces as well. We used these in previous recipes. I've got the salsa con queso and some regular salsa. We can put those in. Enough room here, perfect. We'll set a kitchen timer for an hour. But we're actually going to come back in about half an hour because there's a couple of steps that we need to do in the meantime. So we'll be back in about, by the power of editing, it'll seem but a moment, but to me it'll be half an hour later. I highly doubt these next couple of maintenance steps are going to take 20 minutes to get things ready, but there are a few things that we can do while we wait for the croquettes to finish cooling. The first of which I'm going to do is I'm going to be at the stove just off shot for a second while I pour in, they want you to use peanut oil, but I've still got this huge gallon of veggie oil. I'm going to use that instead. Actually, what is this? It's a gallon of veggie oil, so I'm going to use that instead of buying peanut oil. But I've got to open it. I've got to actually pierce the seal and get it open. So that's going to be going. I'm going to move the... Actually, I don't need to... I just need to step gingerly to get around the camera. Okay, so I'll move that forward just a touch so I can get around a little bit more easily in the kitchen. Bring that off shot as well. Slide that back a touch. Now we're going to pour the oil into a stock pot. Like I said, I'm going to do all of this off shot. I want to get that to about 2 inches. Holding this thing is easy does it. Holding that gallon of veggie oil is kind of bugging my wrist a bit because we went axe throwing on Thursday and I could not get a hold of throwing the axe, so it was kind of hurting my wrist a little bit, but nothing I can do there. The temperature we want this time on the oil is 375. So we're going to set the thermometer in there. We'll set that to, we'll turn this on, set the temperature. Oop. Not down, Phoenix. We want to go up on the thermometer. Just so you can see that I'm setting the thermometer temperature off shot. Set the probe in there. Then we'll start the oil heating up. And in the meantime, we're going to start our 3 stations. As you can probably guess by the pie plates and what goes in each station, what we're going to be putting in them. So we've got it just off shot here, but this one's going to be our flour station, where we want a cup of flour for that. This one we're going to beat 3 eggs in, and the last one we're going to pour in a box, which is probably more than 2 cups of panko, but we're going to use a box for a nice round measurement. So, first we'll get the flour station all set up. And once the canister closes, we can put the flour back up. Give me the veggie oil, I'll put that back on top of the fridge. We'll give that a little more coverage in that pie plate. Okay. Trying to keep the flour in there as much as I can. Just giving my hands a quick wash. Then we'll get the eggs out of the way, but we are going to be pulling out 3 of them. Make sure these are just barely good, but they're still good. 1. Trying not to get any shell in there. Okay, good, no shell. 2. I'm going to see if I can adjust that how the thermometer is set up so I can read it a little bit more easily. Now that'll kind of work. And our 3rd egg is just off shot behind me. Oh, I didn't realize it was cracked on top there. Didn't seem like it broke anything though. And once again, no shell, mother bar. So those can get ready to go down the disposal. We'll give this a light beating. Oop. Time's a little bit tight today, so I may end up having to cut the setting on the croquettes short. Just because I've got a fair amount happening. I'm trying to watch the temperature of the oil as closely as I can here. That's probably beaten up about enough. We can get that out of the way. Then we'll mix, then we'll put the panko in the last station. Okay, actually I'll show off the box here even though I'm working with getting the panko ready off shot. Okay, just go ahead and pour all of that in like so. Okay, give that a little bit more coverage as well. And with the stations ready, we'll come back when we reach one of two milestones. Either the last 13 minutes on the setting time on the last setting time of the croquettes expires, or when the oil reaches temperature, whichever comes first. Hopefully they'll be fairly close together, but we'll find out which one happens first. I'm going to cut the timer short on the croquettes being in the fridge, but the oil just came up to temperature, and like I said, time is a little bit tight this morning. So I'm going to start by getting the croquettes out of the first batch of croquettes out of the fridge. Then we're going to roll each of them in the flour mixture, which I'm doing actually it's just barely in shot. Then in the egg. Whoa! Shoot, I had one fall down the disposal. I'm not going to try to retrieve that one. I should probably put these down so I can use both of my hands. And finally into the breadcrumbs. And we'll put that one back on the pan. We'll run the rest of these that are on this baking sheet in. Remember, we want to go flour, then egg, then breadcrumbs. I'm also trying not to reach across the camera so you don't get a shot of my arm. You can actually see what on earth I'm doing. So I'm trying to be careful there as well. Now I'm actually going to get both my hands in here. Hopefully my arm, especially once I go to the breadcrumbs, isn't going to go too crazy. Well, it would probably help if I make a couple of moves here. If I bring the first batch over. I mean, either way, I'm going to end up with having to reach across. Maybe I won't. Let me see if I can do it this way. Maybe move the flour down. That'll probably work. So we can do that. And then the last croquette. Well, actually, I've got one more for this batch. Bring that back to the baking sheet, and then this last one. Yeah, I think that'll work a lot better. Won't be quite so awkward when I have to reach to go into the breadcrumbs. It's probably not going to be quite that clean, but all right. Okay. I think we've got all of that set there. I'll give my hands a quick wash. And they suggest using a slotted spoon to drop these croquettes into the oil. Let's see if they'll all even fit. I'm going to prep the first couple. I think they will. They'll be sizable, but I think they'll all fit. Yep. All right, we'll put those in the oil. Okay. So we're going to let those cook for about, I think we want to let those cook until each is golden. That should take about 3 to 4 minutes. Meanwhile, I'm crumbling up the parchment paper for the first batch. Meanwhile, I'm going to get the other batch out and start preparing those ones. egg. And finally the breadcrumbs. Probably would help if I set a timer as well. Definitely smelling the crab on that first batch. And we'll pull it out about, we'll check them about 7 after. Hopefully I'll have another batch that's all ready to go in by then. I should. Remember that these aren't taking me too much effort to get rolled up. Ideally I would bring the croquette to the, or I'd bring the pan a little bit closer, but as the only other thing on this side is the stove, and I don't really want to set the baking sheet down on the stove, I'm having to put it on the sink side, on the counter on the sink side. So hopefully I'm not getting too much spilling on the egg, thankfully. But it is something that I could probably work on a little bit more to keep an eye on. Oh yeah, I'll have another batch of croquettes all ready to go by the time we're ready to check these ones. Okay. Now rather than get greedy and try to get one more prepared, since I'm watching the clock on the microwave, I'm just going to give my hands a quick clean. Then we're going to bring the camera over to the stove, because I'd rather not try to bring the croquettes to the camera, especially when they're going to be dripping oil and I might be ready to pull them out already. Let me check on this first one. Oh, look at that. Okay, I think this first batch is ready to come out, so of course I'm going to be putting it on a plate that I've lined with paper towel to keep, or to let the oil drip off. Pull this first batch of croquettes off. I'll bring the second batch over and put that in. Once again, using the slotted spoon to put them all in. Okay. This time I'm actually going to set a 4-minute timer. Oop, not 40, Phoenix. Gotta go 04, that's right. So the timer is all set. Rather than bore you guys with the rest of the cook preparation, I'm going to do the rest of these off camera, and then we'll take a quick look at how they look before we move over to my desk for the taste test. This is the aftermath of everything in the recipe. So we only lost the one croquette down the disposal, and we had one more crumble on, I had one more crumble on me as I was putting it together. I was able to smush it back together and get it to reform. So I'm going to plate one of these up. I also gave them a few more minutes to cool because I was washing dishes. I'm going to plate one of these up, and I will meet you guys over at my desk for the taste test. I've got one of the croquettes right here. As I mentioned at the top of the video, I've actually never had tofu before in my life, so this is going to be my first time tasting tofu. I expect my reaction to tofu to range somewhere between, oh my god, this is the greatest thing I've ever tasted, and oh my god, I never want this crap on my tongue again. One thing I have heard about tofu, though, is it mostly takes on the flavor of whatever it's with. Now, like I said, having never had tofu, I don't know if that's true or not, Somebody who eats tofu religiously, however, can weigh in on that in the comments below. But let's give this a taste and see what I think of it. It actually has kind of a welcome spiciness to it. I'm a little bit surprised by that. It's pretty good for something I wasn't expecting, I wasn't sure how it was going to taste. I didn't really notice the tofu all that much, which kind of surprised me a little bit. But, like I said, a little bit of spice is welcome there. Obviously, still a little bit warm since it just came out of hot oil not too long ago. But otherwise, the consistency seemed to be pretty good on everything, and yeah, that's another episode of Mystical Munchies in the books. What we've got coming up on the channel is tomorrow we're continuing Christmas and We're starting Christmas in Arkham proper with the first leg of the campaign as we play Eldritch Horror. Monday we'll be starting our first look at Mr. President from GMT, and next week for Mystical Munchies we'll be Into the Side as we make Honey Muffin. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.